I think I'm live. Hold on, I gotta do my phone. Hey everybody. Hey Mark. Hey Rudak. Hello Matt. Hey Anthony. Thanks for stopping in, everybody. Tonight we're talking about layouts, also known as thumbnails, and comic book planning. And I went and I printed out a script. This is from Harrow County. This is from Harrow County number 1, page 17. And I thought we would try thumbnailing this page and see what we come up with. And yeah. So like, here's the materials that I use when I'm doing layouts. Pencils. I got a red one that I do like real rough scribbles with, and then I have a normal one, like a gray graphite one, and then I have this 3mm one. Or is this 3mm? That doesn't seem like 3mm. Whatever size this bigger lead is. And I use this mostly for shading and stuff. And then this is my book map. This is a thing I just made in Illustrator and then I print out for myself. And this is very handy for, like I started doing this with B.P.R.D, where I would sort of diagram an issue that I was working on before I started on my layouts. And I would do stuff like just make notes. So like I would say, oh, okay, this from here to here is one scene. And I would say like, oh, this is like the intro and the point of it is to be spooky. And I basically just sort of try to organize my thoughts about what the story was on this stuff. Hey, Edie. And I would, go through the whole issue that way, just like breaking down what each like scene did, and I could have an idea just sort of at a glance of where I was in the issue. And I have it like I have the setup so that like this is the middle of a 22-page issue, and then if it's a normal 22-page issue with no ads, it's like this right here. I marked where the staples will go. Just like if you're going to do a double-page spread, like that's the best place to do a double-page spread. If you're going to do it in the middle of the book, because this is like one single piece of paper. That's something I think about. Hey, Anton. Oh, geez, Rudek, is it actually started now? Here comes our Tula tippy taps. Okay, good. The other thing I use, and this is what came up last week, this is why we got talking about, was using Post-it notes. And I love using these white ones. Although I do have a giant pile of yellow ones next to my desk too. But these are very good for all kinds of stuff because like one of the things about comics is just that you're working with finite amounts of space. And so you need to organize things based on how much space you have. And Post-it notes work really good for sort of breaking down panels on a page or breaking down pages in a book. For example, when I was writing The Lonesome Hunters, these are probably super embarrassing, but we'll look at them anyway. So when I was first writing The Lonesome Hunters, this was how I outlined it when I first began, where it was like, here's a splash page, Howard walking down the street. Howard goes into the store, buys some sad, lonely shit. Store clerk is chatty, calls Howard boss or jefe, talks about someone who died all alone. So I'm just like breaking down, like, this is what I want to happen on each page. And a 22-page comic takes up 22 Post-it notes. And what's really good about using Post-it notes is I can just be like, oh, you know what? This page needs another page in between. And I can just take this out, put the new page in, write down what it's going to be. And yeah. And that's the real advantage of the Post-it notes, is that you can just sort of move things around and experiment with stuff. So the first way to do that is, so let's take a look at our script here. So panel 1, the next morning we cut to a shot of the deep woods, trees. I should give credit. This is a script written by Cullen Bunn for Harrow County. Next morning we cut to a shot of the deep woods, trees, mostly pines, but oaks and black walnut and white ash too, loom all around. Caption: the woods, on the other hand, stretched away from the farm. Second caption: and into forever. We see Emmy walking through the woods. She follows a pine straw carpeted trail, looking at nature rising up around her with a sort of fascination on her face. She has a switch in hand and she swats at weeds. Caption: some of the trees were taller even than the blighted oak upon the hill. Emmy wondered if the lightning-scarred tree had once been part of the forest. Then we angle past spiderwebs in the trees as Emmy walks by. More captions. For now, we don't have to worry too much about these captions. Like, we should read them. We should know what they're talking about. But just for demoing stuff today, we can skip through this a little bit. But angle past spiderwebs in the trees as Emmy walks by. Panel 4, Emmy is climbing up a rise. Trees loom all around her. Panel 5, Emmy approaches a rickety wooden bridge and crosses a cold, gurgling creek. Can't speak. So if we're going to do this on Post-it notes, we just start in with panel 1. And it says here, we cut to a shot of the deep woods, trees, mostly pines, but oak and black walnut and white ash too loom all around. So this is just an establishing scene. And we can think of, like, there's all kinds of stuff we can do with that. Like, that is wide open as far as composition goes. But we can start off just by sort of thinking of like what a forest looks like. And this is a terrible drawing of a forest, but this is like a huge part of this is just getting the ideas out of your head and onto paper as fast as you can. So then, where can I put this so it'll still be? There we go. Let's label this one panel 1. And then panel 2, we see Emmy walking through the woods. She follows a pine straw carpeted trail, looking at nature rising up around her with sort of fascination on her face. She has a switch in hand and she swats at weeds. So now I have to sort of figure out, like, what does that action look like? And if we think about Emmy with a switch, I'm thinking something kind of like this. Like, that's kind of my pose. And she's coming down the path And there's going to be trees, so we can still see that she's in the forest. All right. Yeah, Rudek, yeah, I definitely look up a lot of these trees. I do not know what it's called. I have a book somewhere that has it's about tree anatomy that I have used in the past to help me get trees right. All right, so panel 3, angle past spiderwebs in the trees as Emmy walks by. So we can think of this as being like up in the trees. And we can see Emmy sort of walking by down below. Actually, she's got her switch in the other hand. Doesn't really matter right now, but we're just trying to think about, like, basically, I guess I should have said this at the outset. Like, the point of doing a layout on Post-it notes like this is that, for me at least, it's impossible to imagine a whole comic book page at once. Like, it's just too much for me to think about. So I have to break it down into smaller chunks. And even these are not like, this is sort of an idea for a composition for a panel, but it's not, probably not going to be the composition that I need. But once I have all my little Post-it notes laid out, then I can actually look at what I have and be like, okay, now I see what I need to fit onto a page. Emmy is climbing up a rise. Trees loom all around her. And what's going to be fun is when we're done, I'll go find the page that I actually did for this, because I'm guarantee you it'll be totally different than what we do today. So Emmy climbing up a rise, trees loom all around her. So that I kind of imagine would be Emmy sort of like stepping over a rise. This actually reminds me of something that I try hard to think about when I'm drawing stuff, is to try to make my environments so that they're not always just on flat ground. Like, let there be little hills and bumps and stuff. And it makes, like, when you think about like how a storefront sits on a hill, where the street is sort of running down the hill, then it makes, it opens you up to design some way more interesting storefront stuff. And the same is true for forests and all kinds of stuff. Just thinking about hills and bumps. All right, panel 5. Emmy approaches a rickety wooden bridge that crosses a cold, gurgling creek. Now, I'm thinking we just did a front view, and we're kind of doing a thing where we're alternating between, we can see Emmy's front here, and then we're sort of looking over her shoulder, and then we can see her front. Now, I kind of feel like we should go closer on Emmy, and then she's looking at the bridge. And here's our gurgling creek. And then there's trees in the background. All right, and that's our page. Like, that is, those are our panels. So now we can look at this and we can sort of think, like, what is, I was going to ask, when do you start considering page flow? But I like this method because you may come up with something more interesting than if you were thinking whole page. Yeah, Rudek, I totally agree. Like, I think when I think, well, I'll go over another sort of way that I've done some layouts in the past after this, but this is, I think, the most versatile and like useful if you're when you're first getting started on layouts. But yeah, like I said, we'll look at some other options. So here's my little page layout thing that I printed out, and it's got a double page spread on it. And so now when I'm thinking about this, it's like, I think I want the establishing shot to probably be the biggest panel. Like, I'm probably going to want to do like something about like that. And now it's occurring to me that I haven't really shown Emmy's face like close up. Like, we have this sort of distant body shot, and we have another distant shot, another like full body shot. And then here we're looking at the back of her head. And like so if this first panel is going to be establishing the environment we're in, then we also need to, somewhere on this page, establish who Emmy is. And even though she's been like, we've seen her through this whole book, like you can't get lazy about that stuff. You have to just keep establishing the same people over and over. So I think what I'm going to do is switch up 3. I think we can do like this full body panel, and then for 3, we'll do something that is like kind of a mid shot of Emmy, but like looking at her through, because the script calls for like looking through the like spider webs of the trees. So we'll do some spider webs here and do that. So actually, let me reorganize these guys. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this will be our establishing panel. And I'm trying to just create a hierarchy of panels. Like I think, and we're going to end on this thing where we're sort of establishing this bridge. And I think this feels like it wants to be sort of a wide panel. So like I said, we're establishing a hierarchy of panels. We're deciding what on this panel is important. So if we do a sort of a wide panel down here, then we still have these 3 panels that we need to figure out. And we could do like 3 of these wide panels that are just not very tall. And that's kind of a pain in the butt. We could do 3 panels like this, which I think would kind of work okay, especially with Emmy being established in the 3rd one, because we'd be like full body, medium shot, and then full body shot again. But now, so because I'm doing it I kind of like this, because what this does is it gives us everything we need. But we also have this option to sort of build this motion through these 3 panels. So Oh, and the other thing we have to think about is leaving room for these captions. So I'm just going to very roughly figure out like how I would do these captions. And I try to keep them, like I try not to be too clever with where I place captions and balloons. It's like I always want to just put them near the top and put them in the reading order. And there's like 2 captions on each page. And this might not be where they end up being placed at the end of the day, but it's a good reminder to keep the space. And then for this last one, I think I would do a caption here and then maybe put one down here, just help sort of lead you off the page. All right, so then we can go in now that we have sort of the mechanical aspects of how this page is going to work. Now we can go in and start thinking of composing individual panels. And there's a lot of people who sort of try to compose a whole page. But I feel like once you sort of have an idea for your flow, as long as you make every panel like a pleasing composition on its own, it's going to look good. And especially like if the panels are sort of speaking to each other too much, it always feels sort of like you lose the sense of each panel being a little slice of time. So and that's something you can do when you want to do it, but you have to do it intentionally. Yeah, Pippi, I think the little panel, the 3 panels, and will show time and show like a relative. Just it'll make it feel like she's moving through space too. Yeah, Edie, leaving space for the balloons and the captions is very easy to forget. And I forget all the time, actually, which is very frustrating. But that's also sort of why like when I do my lettering over my layouts. And then when I go to pencil, I have my lettering like on the page and I can see exactly how much space I have for everything. So we'll just do something really kind of quick. These probably won't be that useful, but we'll do some scribbles. One thing that is always helpful, though, is especially for establishing shots, is to have a strong foreground element. Forests are really easy because you can just like throw a tree trunk in there. And it's like, hey, look at that. Now we have depth. And then you can have like faraway hills back here. And we can even do like some extreme foreground stuff, like have some leaves over here. So it feels like we're inside of a bush. Nice. We're here for the light bulbs. Okay, so there's our establishing shot. And then we have our 3 panels of Emmy walking through. And I think that what I want to do with this is, I think here I was imagining seeing the front of her, like this would be her face. But I think I want to flip it so that we have we have Emmy walking, and then we sort of get a profile. And then we'll get her back. And then it kind of feels like we're standing still and she's like walking this arc past us. And then I'll just sort of figure out a little bit what the, like she's going to be whacking this bit of bush or whatever on the path. That's what that scribble means. And then here, and I'll do like some sort of extreme foreground branches, like smaller branches, but then we can do the spider web here. We can have a little spider on there. And then she heads off down the trail. And I have mixed feelings about, so I have this, there's a lot of, a lot of cartoonists are very interested in sort of like having these lines of action that move your eyes around. And I think that they're cool and I think they are helpful, but I think that there's sometimes when, like, I think most of the time they're not actually as important as a lot of people make them out to be. But I say that because I'm thinking of, I just have this path, I just drew this path that's going off here, and it does make it feel like you would read these captions, and then your eye would sort of like follow this path around, and it sort of turns you around away from the edge of the page, which is kind of cool. All right, and then our last panel is Emmy looking at the bridge. I think I have a problem that I have not been able to ever fix where I draw the back of people's heads a lot. And I think it's probably fine. It probably only bothers me, but I would sure like to find more elegant things than drawing the back of people's heads. But when you want to show someone looking at stuff, it's hard to draw anything but the back of their head. So Emmy was looking at a bridge. And there's going to be like trees and stuff on the other side. And this means that there's water down there. All right. One page laid out, page 17. Now, if I was going to send this to my editor, I would clean it up a little bit. Like I would go in, with some markers and a ruler. And I would do like a second pass on this so that, because it's a little scribbly, like I need to be able to communicate this stuff to another human being, and it is sometimes very hard, especially when you're on a time crunch. But I would go in, I'm not going to ink this whole thing, but I'll do this panel. So I would go in and sort of make a still loose, but less scribbly version of this. Hey, thanks, Anton. Anton says, I always thought it was a hallmark of your work. You bring us along with the character, allowing us to not only view them, but what they are viewing. It's what often gives your pages their immersiveness. That is good to hear. And that's what I am shooting for. Just sort of going to indicate that there's going to be woods back there, and it'll be a little bit dark. Okay. So now it actually kind of looks jankier, but it is more clear. And it's important to remember that like you're just trying to make decisions here. You're not actually trying to draw your comic when you're doing the layouts. There needs to be some trees on this side of the creek. This paper is 8.5 by 11. I'm not sure exactly what size I have these set up. I worked it all out so that when I scan it in, I can zoom in by 150% and it'll be print size. Yeah, Anthony, this has got to go in the back for sure. Hold on, let me go grab my library edition. We'll see how I did this page that got printed, because it's going to be different. Okay, so here's how I did it in this book. I like this panel better than what I did here. Like doing this big one and putting the viewer like inside the woods like this is really good. It could use something like maybe more extreme foreground, but that is good. Especially like this fall down tree right here. That works really well. And I do wish that I had gotten close on her face. Like, I think that this panel is better than this panel, but this panel is really great. Focusing entirely on the spider is a great choice, I think. Good work, Tyler. And I think this panel, though, is kind of better idea than this panel. Like, this is perfectly clear, which is nice, but this gives you a little bit of a, oops, sorry about that. This gives you a little bit of a feeling of anticipation about this bridge. And on the next page, she just like goes across the bridge over here. But yeah, and even this is like a good, and it's kind of a butt camera, which is a strange choice, but I do like the way it feels like we are going up the hill right there. That's nice. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things about telling a story like this is it's not, there's infinite ways to make it work. And it makes it, and that makes the job of doing this so much harder too, is because you could lay out the same page infinite number of ways and tell the story in so many different ways, and there's no right or wrong. There's definitely ways that work better than others, but yeah, it's, I don't know. I am not selling these redact, although I am trying to figure out how to sell them. I don't have like a online store thing set up anywhere, and I've been like busted. Like, as far as time goes, I just don't have time to figure that out yet. Tugboat. Cullen would look at these. Like, I would send these to the editor and to the writer. Basically, I would send, like, I might be kind of irritating to some of my collaborators because I might over communicate. I doubt that that's really possible, but I always try to, when I'm doing this stuff, I try to send it to everyone who's working on the project and try to get the feedback from everybody. And most people have too much on their plate to be able to like stop and be like, hey, maybe panel 4 you could move around to this other angle or whatever. Like, mostly they just sort of look it over and see if it works or not. Yeah, I think you're probably right, Edie. It's not possible to over communicate. Okay, so the other way that I approach these occasionally is to think of these as instead of going like panel contents first, I think of panel hierarchy first. So, for example, I would look at the script and I would say, man, I shouldn't have looked at what we printed because now I'm all informed by that now. But I would sort of look at this and be like, most important thing is this establishing shot. And then I still think probably the second most important thing is Emmy approaching the bridge. And so I know that those are going to be my big panels. So I'll come in and be like, and I'll just sort of really start to lightly lay in some panels and panel sizes. Because there's, like, I could come in here and be like, okay, I can have this big establishing shot, and then I can have this little sliver where we see Emmy coming in, and then we could still have, like, show that she's little against the trees. And then this next two panels are less, like, it's less important that they differentiate each other. So we could just split it down the middle. But we could kind of give the spiderweb panel more space. That's kind of fun. So here we'll have like the establishing shot of our forest. We'll have a path that sort of curves around like this. And then we see Emmy coming along. She's got her switch. And then we're going to have that, we have that spider web one. And I liked the way I did that, where it was like kind of a big spider right in the middle. And then we see Emmy walking off down the way. And then, so then this fourth panel is Emmy coming over the rise. And that's when we could establish her, like show her face real good. Like have her, I'm imagining she's like grabbing onto a branch. Can you guys hear my cat crying at me? And then we could have back at Emmy's head. And then we could even push the bridge further back. And the bridge in this, I don't know if Cullen really intended it, like if this was super intentional, but it feels like it probably was, where it's like she's going to cross this bridge and that's where she meets the skinless boy. And that's where her, you know, her life changes once she's crossed this bridge. She can't come back. So, so having it off a little ways kind of feels nice about that. Like she has to really, you know, travel to get there. That's kind of cool. If we compare, we now have, counting the one that got printed, we have 3 totally different ways to do this page. But I think they're all good. Like I think they would all work. I think like there's definitely a risk when you're doing layouts of, you know, just going down a rabbit hole and never making a decision. So you gotta like, you gotta make a decision and get it done. And you know, one of the things too about layouts is once you go to pencil any of this, you're gonna find stuff to do differently. And so you should, like, these aren't handcuffs locking you down to doing your page a certain way. This is just, they're a tool to get you to just make sure that you're not losing, you know, the forest for the trees. Like if you go into, no pun intended, but if you go in and you just have your final, you know, art page and you just start penciling like a final page without going through this step, then you're really just asking for it. You know, you're gonna get goofed up because you're gonna draw a hand the wrong way, and then the next panel is gonna be not in the right place, and everything. But if you figure out like your flow and your storytelling as one step before you have to think about drawing, then it makes the drawing way easier, because when you're doing the penciling, you don't have to be thinking about the layouts necessarily. Yeah, Edie, you gotta break out of that. I mean, if anyone knows Ian MacKay from Fugazi and Minor Threat, he had a thing where he was like, the best albums in the world all have one thing in common, and that's that they came out. That's a paraphrase. So, I mean, there's yeah, you just got to finish stuff. Yeah, right. That's one of those quotes that's always on the sort of tip of my mind, where it's like, if it's going to be great, it's going to have to get done, and it might not be as great as I hope it'll be, but if it's not done, then it doesn't, it isn't anything. It doesn't exist. Yeah. So I don't know. Anybody got any questions? I don't know if I've ever done like this feels like a tutorial kind of a video. I don't know if I've ever done one of these before. I guess the other thing I could talk about is, so all of these layouts were me working from a script, which is a great luxury. When you're working with a writer, they have gone through and broken down the moments for you. They have like the story beats are there, and you just have to tell it. It's like if somebody tells you the plot to a movie and then tells you to go out on stage and tell everyone in an exciting way, that's easier. I know that's really hard, but it would be easier than just going out on stage and having to make up a exciting movie at the exact same time you're trying to tell the story of the exciting movie. I don't know if that made any sense. But if you don't have a script, the way I have been writing lately is to pull out one of my little page layouts, and I have, where'd they go? So I'll start with one of these for my outlines, and I'll usually go through like just a ton of these, doing an outline for an issue. So I'll sit here and I'll think like, okay, there's this intro scene, and I need person 1 needs to do this, and person 2 needs to do this, and then they're gonna have a fight or something, and then just as they're about to like storm out, the phone rings. So phone rings, and I have this idea that, okay, I can get this done in 4 pages. So then I have to be like, okay, well, on page 1, what am I going to do? So I'll come in here and be like, okay, page 1 has got to be an establishing shot. And I'll start thinking of how I want to dissect these moments. So like, and I'll write things, I'll draw panels that look like this, which are just ridiculous. And then at the same time, I usually have my computer up here on my desk, and I'll be like writing the dialogue for this. And this is like, I just did this in front of you guys. You saw how it took like, 15 seconds to draw this page. now I don't feel bad if I'm like, you know what? I can't do it like this. I need to get rid of this whole thing. And then I'll do like this, and it'll be like close up on the eyeball. And then, you know, whatever thing I'm writing. So I'm working with these stick figures. And this was like, this is something I learned from watching Mon Ben, is I think how you pronounce it. It was a Japanese TV show where they interview manga creators, and they do like, this is how they do all their scripts, but then they write on the page like the dialogue. And actually, I'll do that a lot too, where I'll write some dialogue on here, but then when because I have my computer up right next to me, I can type actual dialogue. But in like in Japan, they call this a name, and I don't know why, but like I don't know if that's the translation of it into the word name, or if that's like the Japanese word is a name. I don't know, but that's what they call it. So like I think of this as a name and not an actual layout, because then when I go to do my layouts, I'll actually do things where I'll, you know, come up with a more developed pose for things, and it'll be actually I'll be a little more concerned with composition versus like a layout versus a name. I would be more concerned with the composition on the layout than on the name. Tugboat, does the writer ever send reference images like this type of bridge? Man, I love it when they do that. Not every writer does that, but when they do, it is always greatly appreciated. And I've had different writers do it different ways. Like sometimes there'll just be a page at the end of the script that'll be like a bunch of reference, and you know it'll show a photo of the bridge, and it'll be like, this is for page 18 or whatever. And sometimes the reference photo is just in line in the script, and other times the reference photo is like a file attached to an email or something. But yeah, I love it when writers provide me with reference of what they're talking about, because you know there's so many times when a writer will actually have an idea in mind, and the script doesn't quite express what they had in mind, and so I give them something that isn't quite what they wanted, and they have to do that thing where they're like, oh, how do I explain what I want? But if you just send me a picture, it's like there's no question. Yeah, Mon Ben is great. Okay, well, I think I'm gonna call it quits. I think that's it for tonight. I hope everyone found that a little bit helpful. I know that I wish someone had sat me down and explained the stuff to me when I first started. Trying to make comics. I mean, the thing, I think I've said this already tonight, but the trick is really to take, like, there's just too much information in a comic book page to be able to hold it all in your head at one time. So the trick is always just to break it down into smaller pieces that you can sort of process one piece at a time. Because if you try to do it all at once, it's just too much. Like my pathetic human brain can't cope. So like anything you can do to break it down into smaller and smaller steps is better. Like that'll help get you through. Oh, that's great to hear, Ed. Thanks, Anton. Thanks, Rudak. All right. That's it. I hope everybody has a great weekend and gets to relax and have some fun. Maybe draw some comics. Um, yeah, don't forget to tell the people you love how much you love them. And I love all you guys. Bye.